President Trump, who's told Chris Wallace he's finished writing answers to Robert Mueller's questions, denounced the Russia investigation in the harshest terms yet, tweeting that it's a total mess and has gone absolutely nuts. They are screaming and shouting at people, horribly threatening them to come up with the answers they want. They are a disgrace to our nation and don't care how many lives they ruin. These are angry people, including the highly conflicted Bob Mueller, who worked for Obama for 8 years. They won't even look at all the bad acts and crimes on the other side. A total witch hunt like no other in American history. Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Emily Jashinsky, culture editor at The Federalist. Sarah Fisher, media reporter for Axios. Mo Alithi, former DNC official and Fox News contributor who runs Georgetown University's Institute of Politics. So the press, Emily, is covering this as a really overheated escalation on the president's part. Disgrace, absolutely nuts, even by the standards of all the previous Trump's attacks on the so-called witch hunt.
Right, and when the president is tweeting in all capital letters very angry things, it's understandable that the press would focus on that a little bit, maybe more than a little bit, in fact. But at the same time, the president has some frustrations about the scope of this investigation into what's supposed to be collusion that I think are rarely acknowledged to the extent that they should be in the press. So it's sort of like what you were talking about in your interview with Chris Wallace. Two things can be true, and I think that's the case here.
Sarah, as a factual matter, saying that Robert Mueller worked for Obama for 8 years is hardly the full story.
I mean, he not only didn't just work for Obama for those years, he was hired under the Bush administration, and he's a registered Republican. So this is not somebody who's just some Democrat out to get him. He's a Republican who's trying to do his job. And even though the media is conflating some of his roles, where he supports, where he doesn't, none of us really know what's going on in Robert Mueller's head. He's never given an interview.
That's right. He doesn't try to compete in that space, Mo. The president also telling Chris Wallace he will probably not be sitting down for an interview with Mueller. He didn't make it 100%, but he said probably. Insiders tell me that Trump is just sick of this investigation and wants to bring it to a head. Could this escalation be the product of Trump having been immersed with his lawyers in preparing these answers to the Mueller questions and that kind of setting him off?
Yeah, look, I don't know what triggers Donald Trump. He's been frustrated with this investigation since day one, right? I mean, he's been frustrated. I mean, he finally got rid of Jeff Sessions, who he's been wanting to get rid of because of this investigation.
And because the Attorney General recused himself.
That's right. That's right, because the Attorney General took himself out of a position where he could have stopped this investigation. So the president's frustration, I guess I get it. His reactions, I don't. I think it doesn't serve him well politically, frankly. I think if he were to just sit back and say, fine, there's nothing there, but I will fully cooperate and show you that there's nothing there, I think it would take away this concern. But that's just not how he's wired.
Yeah,
and
I do note that I remember from the Ken Starr days that he's not the only president to push back against a special counsel or independent prosecutor. All right.
That's right.
So in the interview with Chris Wallace, Chris asked the president about the appointment of acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, who, of course, has a history of slamming the Mueller investigation. The president said that if Whitaker took any steps to curtail or rein in the investigation, the president said he'd leave it up to Whitaker, that he was not going to intervene. And then there was this question.
Did you know, before you appointed him, that he had that record and was so critical of Robert Mueller?
I did not know that. I did not know he took views on the Mueller investigation as such.
Press a little skeptical on the point that he finally gets to appoint his own acting Attorney General who has a well-documented record, and he had no idea that he was a Mueller critic.
Yeah, I mean, I find that hard to believe as well. I'm not sure how big of a deal that is, but at the same time, the president, in his interview with the Daily Caller this week, when he was asked about Whitaker, he did immediately transition into talking about the investigation. So I find it hard to believe. Yeah, it's not something that I'm going to freak out over.
All right, just real quickly, there's a lot of media chatter about indictments are coming any day now, this week, but then they didn't come. So this was part of the speculation about why the president was lashing out.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you would expect him to be a little bit angsty about what could potentially come out here, but I think some of that coverage, too, might be a little bit overblown. We don't know what they're really looking into, and we're hearing reports that he's talking to even some, like, third-level players in this investigation.
I was going to make that point. I mean, we're down to talking about Roger Stone and his associates. I'm not saying that that's not important, but it's not, it doesn't seem like, from what we know now, that there's another major indictment in the works, and yet that was a lot of the press speculation about the president's comments.
Yeah, everyone should just stop speculating. I want the president. I want the president to just chill out
What are the
and
chances
let
of that
this thing
happening?
happen, right? And that's what Democrats are
Right.
demanding. So should the press. The press should just chill out and let this thing play out. We will find out when it's time for us to find out. Mueller doesn't screw around.
The speculation has created such a circus, and it's really so unfounded in so many cases.
All right. I'm also in favor of curtailing speculation, but I'm not holding my breath.